Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at something that should be pretty interesting for any UPSC aspirant out there.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We're talking about the major shakeup in India's election commission.
Absolutely. This is something that having a deep understanding of could really set you apart in those UPSC exams,
Yeah, absolutely.
both in the mains and prelims.
Let's break it down. The big news is a new act that completely changes how the chief election commissioner is appointed the CEC.
Right.
And we're moving away from that old seniority-based system.
Yeah, and this new act, actually, it didn't come out of nowhere. It's directly linked to that landmark Supreme Court case from 2023.
Oh, right.
Anoop Burnwal versus the Union of India.
Right.
In that case, the court basically said the government having complete control over these appointments
Yeah.
wasn't exactly ensuring the Election Commission's independence. It was a pretty significant ruling.
So this new act is Parliament's attempt to address those concerns, right?
Yeah,
To create a more formal, structured process.
precisely. And the Supreme Court, in its judgment, had even temporarily mandated a committee with the Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition, and the Chief Justice of India
Wow.
to advise on the appointments, highlighting the need for that more balanced approach.
Okay, so walk us through this new process.
Yeah.
What are the key changes UPSC aspirants need to be aware of?
So first and foremost, the pool of potential candidates has been significantly narrowed. Now only current or former secretary-level officers are eligible.
Okay, so you really got to have some serious bureaucratic credentials even to be considered.
Right.
What happens next?
So now we have a two-committee system. The first is a search committee led by the law minister.
Right.
They're responsible for shortlisting 5 potential candidates.
Wow, imagine being on that committee, having to narrow down a pool of incredibly accomplished individuals to just 5 names.
I know that's a massive responsibility.
Huge.
And the stakes are high. This shortlist then goes to the selection committee. And this is where the real power lies. The Prime Minister, a cabinet minister, and the leader of the opposition in the Lok Sabha make up this committee.
So even with these committees, the government still has a considerable amount of influence over who gets appointed, right?
Yeah, but there's a twist. This election committee has the power to choose someone entirely different, someone not even on that initial shortlist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh.
so this flexibility...
So there's benefits and drawbacks to this approach, right?
Exactly. It's a classic example of how a seemingly procedural change can have significant ramifications for the balance of power.
This definitely sounds like the kind of nuanced topic that UPSC examiners would love to throw at an unsuspecting candidate.
You're spot on. Understanding the complexities of this issue, from the constitutional provisions to the political dynamics at play, is crucial for anyone aiming to crack the UPSC exams.
All right, so we've got this new selection process with its own set of pros and cons. But there's more to this story, isn't there?
Right.
This wouldn't be a deep dive without some controversy.
You're absolutely right. There's been quite a lot of pushback against certain aspects of this new act.
Okay, let's unpack that. What's causing all the stir?
So one of the most contentious points is the exclusion of the Chief Justice of India from the appointment process. Remember, the Supreme Court had mandated his inclusion in the interim solution, and now the new act completely removes the CJI from the equation. This has sparked concerns about the judiciary's ability to ensure the impartiality of the Election Commission.
That's a pretty significant departure from the Supreme Court's directive. I can see why that's raising eyebrows.
And it's not just the legal experts who are concerned. Even former CEC O.P. Rawat has publicly expressed his apprehension that the new system could make appointments more susceptible to political influence, particularly given the composition of that selection committee.
Yeah, it does raise questions about the potential for bias when the Prime Minister and a cabinet minister, both belonging to the ruling party, are part of that selection committee.
You're hitting on a key point here. Critics are worried that this structure with the leader of the opposition as the sole counterbalance could lead to increased partisanship in the appointments, especially in the already heated political climate of India.
It sounds like this issue is a perfect example of how theoretical laws can have real-world implications,
Yes.
with the potential to impact the very foundations of Indian democracy.
And this is precisely what makes it such a relevant topic for the UPSC exams. Being able to analyze these complexities, understanding the arguments from different perspectives, is crucial for demonstrating your grasp of Indian polity and governance.
All right, so we have a potentially less independent selection process, concerns about increased partisanship, and a whole lot of debate swirling around this new act. What's the final piece of this intricate puzzle?
Unsurprisingly, all of this controversy has led to legal challenges. petitions are pending in the Supreme Court, specifically challenging the exclusion of the CJI from the appointment process.
So the saga continues. It sounds like the Supreme Court's ruling on these petitions could potentially reshape this entire process yet again.
Yes, the court is scheduled to hear these petitions in February 2025, and the outcome is eagerly anticipated. It could have a significant impact on the future of the Election Commission and, by extension, Indian democracy.
This is definitely a cliffhanger we'll be watching closely. But before we move on, let's take a quick break. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into critical issues impacting India. We'll be back in a moment to explore what this all means for you as UPSC aspirants and why understanding this shakeup is so crucial for your exam preparation.
Welcome back to our deep dive into this revamped process for appointing India's election commissioners. We've covered the background, the key changes, and the controversy surrounding this new act.
Right. We talked about the eligibility criteria, the two-committee system, and all the debate around excluding the Chief Justice of India and that potential for partisanship.
Now let's shift gears and talk about why this matters for you, our ambitious UPSC aspirants.
This is where it gets real for those studying for the UPSC exams. This isn't just an academic debate. This stuff has real consequences for India's democracy and how it functions. And that's something the UPSC wants to see you understand.
Exactly. The UPSC is looking for candidates who can demonstrate a deep understanding of how constitutional provisions, legal decisions, and political realities intersect in Indian governance.
So how can all this information about the Election Commission be applied to the UPSC exam?
This entire saga is practically a goldmine for essay questions. Imagine getting a topic like analyzing the independence of the Election Commission in light of recent developments, or discuss the evolving role of the judiciary in ensuring free and fair elections in India.
Those are classic UPSC essay prompts. And with this new act and the Supreme Court case, there's so much to unpack. You can easily weave in Article 324 of the Constitution, the Supreme Court's arguments, the arguments for and against the new act. It's the perfect opportunity to showcase a comprehensive understanding of the issue.
And don't forget the historical context. You could discuss how the Election Commission has evolved over the years, its successes and challenges, and how this new act fits into that larger narrative.
The UPSC examiners love to see that you can connect the dots, analyze historical trends, and understand how current events shape the future.
And it's not just about essays. This topic is almost guaranteed to come up in the interview round as well.
Oh, I can already imagine the questions. Do you believe the Election Commission is more or less independent after this new act, or how do you see the balance of power shifting between the executive, legislature, and judiciary in the context of the Election Commission?
These questions are designed to assess not just your knowledge, but your analytical thinking and your ability to present a well-reasoned argument. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's about demonstrating your grasp of the complexities and justifying your stance with solid reasoning.
Right, and this is where your preparation comes in. You can draw on the pros and cons we discussed earlier, talk about the potential for political influence versus the need for a streamlined selection process.
You could even compare India's model to how other democracies appoint their election commissioners, showing that you've studied different systems and can critically analyze their strengths and weaknesses would definitely impress the interview panel.
And let's not forget the importance of staying updated on current affairs.
Absolutely. The Supreme Court will be hearing those petitions challenging the act in February 2025, and the outcome could significantly impact the future of the Election Commission. Imagine being able to cite the Supreme Court's verdict and its implications during your interview. It shows you're not just memorizing facts, but actively engaging with the evolving landscape of Indian polity.
It's all about demonstrating a genuine interest in these issues and an understanding of how they impact the country.
Beyond essays and interviews, this topic also has relevance for the general studies papers, particularly GS Paper 2, which focuses on polity and governance. You could be asked to analyze the provisions of the new act, discuss its constitutional validity, or even compare it to previous attempts at reforming the Election Commission.
And let's not forget about the prelims. They can easily sneak in a tricky multiple-choice question about the eligibility criteria for the CEC and eke out to the composition of the selection committee, or even the year the act was passed.
You're absolutely right. Understanding this issue inside and out is essential for any serious UPSC aspirant. It's a multifaceted topic that tests your knowledge of the Constitution, the judiciary current affairs, and even your ability to construct well-supported arguments.
So what's the key takeaway for our listeners who are on this UPSC journey?
don't underestimate the significance of this seemingly procedural change in the Election Commission. It's a live, evolving issue with the potential to shape the future of Indian democracy, and it's a topic that could make or break your UPSC performance.
It's a great example of how seemingly dry topics can actually be incredibly dynamic and impactful.
Exactly. And that's what makes studying for the UPSC so challenging and rewarding. It's about going beyond rote learning and developing a nuanced understanding of how India functions, how its institutions interact, and how current events shape its trajectory.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground in this episode, and I'm sure our listeners have plenty to digest.
Remember, this deep dive is just a starting point. As an aspiring civil servant, continuous learning and staying informed are crucial for success.
So keep those books open, stay up to date on current affairs, and most importantly, keep those brains engaged. The world of Indian polity is constantly evolving, and so should your understanding of it.
And before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, we want to remind you to hit that subscribe button and like this video if you're finding our insights helpful. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll delve into potential future scenarios and discuss what they could mean for the Election Commission and Indian democracy.
Welcome back, everyone. In the previous parts of our deep dive, we dissected the new act that's reshaping the appointment process for India's Election Commission, and we discussed its potential impact on the UPSC exam. Now it's time to put on our forecasting hats and explore some possible future scenarios.
Yeah, that's right. We've analyzed the what and the why. Now let's delve into the what if.
Exactly. We know the Supreme Court is scheduled to hear those petitions challenging the act in February 2025. The outcome of this hearing could significantly impact the trajectory of the Election Commission.
There are a few possible scenarios that could unfold. One possibility is that the Supreme Court upholds the act as it is. This means the new appointment process with the Selection Committee and the exclusion of the CJI becomes the established law.
So in this scenario, the government's role in choosing the CEC and ECs would be further solidified.
Precisely, and that could have a ripple effect on how the Election Commission is perceived both within India and on the international stage. The question would remain, will it be seen as genuinely independent, or will there be lingering doubts about political influence? This is something you could analyze in a UPSC essay discussing the potential impact on India's democratic image globally.
It's a question that could fuel debates for years to come. What other outcomes should we consider?
Another possibility is that the Supreme Court strikes down the act either entirely or partially. For instance, they could rule that excluding the CJI is unconstitutional and mandate his inclusion in the Selection Committee. This would be a significant victory for those who advocate for a more independent appointment process.
It would certainly reassert the judiciary's role in safeguarding the integrity of the Election Commission.
Exactly, and it could potentially restore public trust in the process, which has been somewhat shaken by these changes. The Supreme Court's reasoning in such a scenario would be crucial to understand, particularly for UPSC aspirants preparing for legal and constitutional aspects of the exam.
Okay, so we have uphold and strike down. Are there any other possibilities?
Of course. The Supreme Court could also opt for a middle ground. They might suggest modifications to the act, perhaps proposing a different composition for the Selection Committee or introducing additional safeguards to ensure greater transparency and impartiality.
The classic judicial compromise. It reminds us that legal decisions aren't always black and white, but often involve navigating complex and competing interests.
That's precisely why understanding the nuances of legal judgments is so crucial for UPSC aspirants. The Supreme Court might offer specific reasoning for their modifications, highlighting constitutional principles or precedents that UPSC candidates need to be aware of.
So predicting the Supreme Court's decision is no easy feat. There's a whole spectrum of potential outcomes.
Absolutely. And what's crucial for UPSC aspirants is not to try and predict the outcome, but to understand the arguments on both sides and be prepared to articulate the potential implications of different rulings. This showcases analytical thinking, which is highly valued in the UPSC exam.
Now let's play devil's advocate for a moment. Let's say the Supreme Court upholds the act and the new appointment process remains as is. What are some potential long-term consequences we should be thinking about?
One concern is that it could lead to increased politicization of the Election Commission. If the government of the day has a greater say in who gets appointed, it could potentially influence the conduct of elections, raising doubts about fairness and impartiality. This could in turn erode public trust in the electoral process, which is fundamental to a healthy democracy.
That would undoubtedly have negative consequences for India's democratic institutions and its global standing as the world's largest democracy.
On the other hand, supporters of the act argue that it streamlines the appointment process, making it more efficient. They also emphasize that including the leader of the opposition in the selection committee provides a degree of balance and prevents the ruling party from having absolute control.
So it's a complex issue with valid arguments on both sides.
And this is precisely what makes it such a fascinating and important topic to study. The UPSC exam isn't about memorizing facts. It's about understanding complex issues, critically analyzing different perspectives, and forming your own informed opinions.
It's about recognizing that governance is rarely about clear-cut right and wrong answers, but about navigating the complexities of a diverse and evolving society.
Well said. And ultimately, the success of any system, whether it's the Election Commission or any other institution, hinges on the individuals involved and their commitment to upholding democratic principles and ensuring fairness.
And that brings us back to you, our future civil servants. The responsibility of safeguarding India's democratic institutions will eventually rest on your shoulders.
So stay informed, stay engaged, and never stop asking critical questions.
Yeah. And on that note, we wrap up our deep dive into the shakeup of India's Election Commission. We hope you found this exploration insightful and thought-provoking. Remember, this is just the beginning of your journey into the fascinating world of Indian polity. Keep learning, keep exploring, and who knows, maybe one day you'll be the one shaping the future of India's Election Commission and ensuring free and fair elections for generations to come. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a like. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a critical issue impacting India. Thanks for listening.